Hey folks, how's it going? Thank you for checking out the video. If you do enjoy it, do remember to give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, do subscribe to the channel. It does really help out. Today, I'm going to be talking about funnel charts. So in my previous video, I talked a lot about pie charts and the fact that pie charts get a bad reputation, and all of that is to do with the fact with people misusing them. Now, a current bugbear for me is the fact that I keep seeing people misusing funnel charts. What kind of thing do I mean? Well, things like this. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, well, what's wrong with it? Why is that a misuse? Funnel charts aren't really sort of categorical. They're not really there to compare two particular categories and see how they're performing against each other, right? Now, I recently spoke to somebody who'd done this in one of their dashboards, and I was like, well, why have you chosen a funnel chart? And their reply was, well, just using a bar chart's a bit boring, isn't it? I fancy doing something a little bit different. Don't do that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using bar charts. For this type of comparison, for this type of analysis, a bar chart is absolutely the right choice. It tells the story absolutely fine. It makes comparing those categories far easier. So when is a good time to use a funnel chart? Well, funnel charts are primarily for tracking the progress of something through a particular process. So let's say a sales funnel. Clues in the name, right? You might, for argument's sake, get 100 sales leads, and then maybe you qualify 50 of those leads, and then 25 of them head to proposal, and that ends up in 5 sales at the end of the process. Or maybe insurance claims. You get 100 insurance claims, and you want to track how many are rejected at each stage of the claims process, right through to the payout stage. Recruitment's another really good one. You might get 100 job applications for a particular job, and you decide to shortlist 50 of the CVs. You then invite 25 people for interview, 10 people for second interview, until eventually you offer the job to a single person. Or how about this for an example? Squid Game. If you're not familiar with Squid Game, it's a Netflix series. If you haven't seen it, I absolutely recommend going and watching it. It is very good. The premise of the series, you've got 456 players who enter into the Squid Game contest. They go through a series of games where in each game a number of players gets eliminated from that competition. So we've got here the games that take place listed, how many players take part in each round. I've done a little bit of interactivity with this as well. So if I filter for a particular game, let's say Sugar Honeycombs, for example, that will tell me how many players took part in that, and it will filter to which players those were over here. We might go down to, say, the Squid Game, which was the penultimate game, which was down to the final 2 players, and then eventually onto our winner here as well. And that interactivity works the other way around too. So, for example, if I select somebody over here, I'll see which games they took part in. So this chap made it right through to the marbles round. This chap made it through as far as special game, and then if I select our winner, it shows you he made it right through to the end of the contest. So there's a good example for you of when a funnel chart makes sense. We are monitoring the progress of those players through a particular process. Now, the other thing that I wanted to touch on was how's the best way to model your data for doing that kind of analysis as well. How should you structure your information if you want to build something like that? And when it comes to data modeling, the question that all data professionals should be asking themselves, what would Kimball do? So if you dive into the Data Warehouse Toolkit, which is kind of the textbook for data modeling for star schemas, the information is also available on the Kimball website. And look here at example types of fact table. So this will give us various information around fact tables. Down here it tells us there are 3 kinds of fact table, and the one that we are particularly interested in is here. So this is talking about an accumulating snapshot fact table, and these are used for a predictable process. Examples being things like an order process, a claims process, which is one of the examples I called out as well. So what does an accumulating snapshot fact table look like? How do they actually work? So I've got an example to take you through here. I'm using just a retail example here, so an ordering process as it were. We've got here the thing that's been monitored is the order as it goes through a particular process, and the grain of it is at the order level. So we've got an order value of €100. It gets ordered on the 1st of April, What you would see here from an accumulating snapshot perspective is when the next stage of the process happens, you get a new column. So in this example, we're saying the order was delivered on the 6th of April. And then if another event happens in that process again, say for argument's sake, the customer decides that they no longer want the order and they're going to return it, you get another column with another date, so that happens on the 11th of April. Now that isn't the only pattern that Kimball recommends for modelling process. There's another pattern notoriously known as Kimball 145, also referred to as a timespan accumulating snapshot table. So again, if you jump onto the Kimball website, this is in the Data Warehouse Toolkit as well. We can look through this, and that gives a brief summary of how this particular method works as well. And to step you through how a timespan snapshot works for you, I've got another example for you here as well. So timespan snapshot works a little bit differently. In this instance, again, we're looking at the same retail order number. So we've got 100 euros value, that is being ordered on the 1st of April. When the next step in the process occurs, rather than adding a new column, we add a new row. So we add an additional record with a different event type. So in this instance, on our 6th of April there, we've got the delivery, and then when the return happens, that gets added on the bottom, so you get additional values there. Now you do need to be careful with this particular type of fact table. If we take into account our order values there, if you were looking to do a simple analytics in terms of doing how much revenue has happened in this particular month, we've now got duplicate rows in there, so you can't now just add up that order value column because it's going to give us 300 euros when in fact the orders only got a value of 100 euros. So this becomes a semi-additive fact table. You can only at this point sum up that particular measure if it's been sliced or diced by the event type effectively. So you do have to bear that in mind. Just the other thing that is worth calling out as well is that, strictly speaking, if you're going to follow the Kimball guide, there's some additional columns you should add here. So you should be adding both a start date and an end date for a particular order status and a current record flag as well. So at this point, this starts to look like a type 2 slowly changing dimension if you're looking at those. So I've heard some people call this a type 2 an SED type 2 fact table. For me, that's an oxymoron. It's a fact table, so it can't be designated as a type of dimension, but the pattern is very, very similar. So what might those two patterns look like if we apply them to our Squid Game example, right? So I've actually got two versions of this report. So this page you're looking at now is done using that accumulating snapshot, and what you will find is it gives you exactly the same result. So if I filter by my game, it's going to give you that result there. If I filter by a person, it's going to give you exactly the same result here as well. If I go across here, this is a timespan version of the same report. So if I filter by this particular game here and filter by this particular person again, identical results. So to the naked eye, you're not going to see any difference between those two particular implementations. But where we will see a difference is in the structure of the data. So if I go and have a look at my data view here, here I am looking at the accumulating snapshot version. So I've got a key for each of my players. I've actually got keys for each game and for each date of each game. So I'll be able to slice and dice by both game or by date if I wanted to. And then basically I've got a game 1 key, a game 1 date, game 2 key, game 2 key, and so on and so forth until we hit to the 9 stages. And if I compare that to my timespan fact table, this gives you a much, a far different shape of data. This is much longer, much thinner, and you've just got the 3 columns there for date, player key, and game key. Let's have a look at the model view for each of these as well, because that gets quite interesting too. So for the accumulating snapshot, where I've got that wide table, lots of keys, lots of dates, I end up with lots and lots of relationships to my fact table and lots of inactive relationships. So basically for each column relating to the game and date, it needs to be related to the fact table. Compare that with the timespan version. This looks far simpler. It's just a nice clean one active relationship between each of the tables to that fact table. So how does that manifest itself in the actual report itself? So if I come over to the report view, let's go the accumulating snapshot first. If I look at the data view here, for the accumulating snapshot, let's make this a little bit bigger. For the accumulating snapshot, I had to create all of these measures. Now if we look at the detail behind each of those measures, this first measure is pretty straightforward. For the game one players, it's just to count rows of my fact table. That's nice and simple because the game one relationship for both the game and the date is the active relationship. But if I look at the DAX for the game two player, for example, it gets a bit more complex. So here I've referenced that game one player's measure, which is just a simple count rows. I could have duplicated the count rows, but it's better practice to reference existing explicit measures. I've used the use relationship function to activate the relationship here so that basically it knows to use the game 2 date and the game 2 key. And also because for some of the players, they don't make it as far as game 2. So the records for those are blank for the game date and game 2 key. So I just need to make sure I'm excluding those as blanks to make sure those aren't included, otherwise I get some odd looking results. And I had to repeat that process across all 9 stages of the Squid Game. I also ended up adding this total players measure. And the reason for doing that is because for the funnel chart visual, it's only possible to add a single measure. So to get the result I wanted, I had to consolidate all those 9 measures into one single measure that adds them all together. Let's compare that to the Timespan version. Here it's just one DAX measure. And that DAX measure is just a simple count of rows. So the other thing that was really interesting to look at here is some of the statistics around those 2 different approaches. So what I did is I fired up DAX Studio, looked at some of the Vertipack Analyzer statistics, and you will see here and you'll see here for our Timespan fact table, it's got more records. We know it's a longer table, so there's just shy of 1,300 records there. For the accumulating snapshot, there's 456. So the grain of that is a record per player because I'm monitoring the progress of each player at a time. So that ends up one-to-one with the player table. So much fewer records, but interesting looking at the total size there. Far, far bigger to do that accumulating snapshot. The Timespan snapshot fact table is far smaller in size. So even though it's got more records, it compresses far better. It's got a much smaller memory footprint. So, having presented all of that, feels like it's a compelling argument that says that those Timespan snapshot fact tables, the Kimball 145, is a better approach, right? It's a much simpler data model. It's got fewer relationships and only one set of active relationships. The DAX is simpler, literally a single DAX measure allows us to create that funnel chart, and looking at the statistics as well, it takes up far less memory. Generally speaking, the smaller the memory footprint, the more efficient the model is, the quicker it's going to run. So Timespan 145, the way forward? Well, hang on a minute there, right? I'm going to give you the classic consultant answer of it depends. For this particular use case, for our Squid Game example, yes, the Timespan snapshot is looking like the better option. So for the Squid Game example, we don't necessarily know the length of our process. Like each player You know, we don't know whether or not they're going to be 9 deep in terms of the number of games to take part in. Are they only going to be 1 deep? There's going to be basically variable duration of the process that people are going to be involved in. Potentially something like Squid Game, they might have added a 10th game that we didn't even know about. So that sort of flexibility to just easily add another row makes sense as well. Effectively, the fact that we don't really know like what the width of our table would be or how many columns we would need if we were going to do an accumulating snapshot makes the timespan snapshot feel like a good choice, and I'd be happy with that for this particular example. Having said that, I would say that out in the field 90%, 95%, maybe even 99% of the time, an accumulating snapshot is what you'll more likely see. So the retail example, the sales example that I use in the little examples that I step through, very common to see that done as an accumulating snapshot. It is basically for things that you know have got like a relatively small process and it's a fixed process. Accumulating snapshot works really well. So yeah, it depends, but it's good to know that there are 2 options out there, and it's good to make sure that you choose the one that best suits your use case. I hope that's been useful. Maybe if you want to tell me how you use funnel charts, if you've got some really good use cases and examples, you can drop into the comments below and let me know. Likewise with the data modeling aspects, have you got a particular preference in terms of how you like to model the data when you're looking at process? Drop in below, you know, let's get that conversation going as well. If you have enjoyed today's video, as I say, please do give it a like, and if you want to continue to get more content like this, subscribe to the channel as well, and I'll catch you next time.